The year is 480 BC. 300 men stand shoulder to shoulder in a narrow mountain pass, their bronze shields locked together like an impenetrable wall. Before them stretches an army of over 100,000 Persian soldiers, the largest military force the world has ever seen. The Persian King Xerxes sends a messenger with a simple demand: lay down your weapons. King Leonidas of Sparta responds with just 2 words that echo through history: Molon Labe, come and take them. What happens next at the Battle of Thermopylae becomes one of the most legendary last stands in human history. But here's what most people don't realize. The Spartans didn't hold off the Persian army for 3 days through sheer bravery or superior numbers. They did it through tactics so brutally effective, so perfectly designed, that modern military forces around the world still study and adapt them today. From special operations teams to riot police, from corporate boardrooms to championship sports teams, the tactical principles developed in ancient Sparta continue to shape how we fight, defend, and win. So what made these warriors so special? What secrets did they know that we're still learning from over 2,000 years later? Stick around, because by the end of this video you'll understand exactly why the Spartan way of war remains the gold standard for tactical excellence and how these ancient techniques are being used right now in the 21st century. Let's start with something most people get completely wrong about the Spartans. When you think of Spartan warriors, you probably imagine individual fighters, incredibly skilled with sword and spear, taking on enemies in one-on-one combat like something out of a movie. And yes, Spartan warriors were phenomenally trained as individuals, but that's not what made them nearly invincible on the battlefield. The real genius of Spartan warfare was that they understood something that modern military theorists didn't fully appreciate until thousands of years later. They understood that the unit, not the individual, was the true weapon of war. Every single Spartan tactical innovation stemmed from this one core principle. Your brother in arms is more important than you are. Your survival depends on the man next to you, and his survival depends on you. This wasn't just philosophy or some kind of motivational speech. It was built into every aspect of how they fought. The foundation of Spartan military might was the phalanx formation, and while other Greek city-states used the phalanx too, the Spartans perfected it to a level that was almost an art form. Picture this. You're a Spartan warrior in the phalanx. You're holding a shield called a hoplon that weighs about 30 pounds and is almost 3 feet in diameter. This shield is so important that the Spartans had a saying: come back with your shield or on it. Why? Because dropping your shield meant you broke the formation. It meant you endangered everyone around you. Now here's the crucial detail that makes the phalanx so brilliant. Your shield doesn't primarily protect you. It protects the man on your left. The right half of your body is protected by the shield of the man on your right. This simple arrangement creates an interlocking defensive wall where every man is simultaneously defending his comrade and being defended by another. You literally cannot survive alone. The tactical implications of this are profound. It means desertion or cowardice doesn't just endanger you, it kills your friends. It means the strongest point of the formation isn't where your best fighter stands, it's where your fighters are most unified. Modern military units still use this principle. Navy SEAL teams, Army Ranger units, Marine Force Recon, they all operate on the same fundamental understanding. The team is the weapon. Individual heroics can get people killed. Coordinated action, where everyone trusts everyone else to do their job, that's what wins battles. But the Spartans took this concept of unity even further, with something truly revolutionary for their time. They synchronized everything. When a Spartan phalanx advanced, they didn't charge wildly like many ancient armies did. They marched in perfect rhythm to the sound of flutes. Yes, flutes. While their enemies screamed and rushed forward in chaotic mobs, the Spartans moved like a single organism, their shields perfectly aligned, their spears at identical angles, their footsteps in complete unison. Can you imagine how terrifying that must have been? You're a Persian or Athenian soldier, and you see this wall of bronze and red cloaks moving toward you with mechanical precision, not rushing, not hesitating, just steadily, inevitably advancing like a tsunami of spears and shields. The psychological impact was devastating, but the tactical advantage was even more important. This synchronized movement meant that when the phalanx needed to turn, to contract, to expand, or to create a gap for a specific tactical purpose, they could do it smoothly without becoming vulnerable. Modern military drill serves exactly the same purpose. When you watch soldiers marching in formation, you might think it's just for show, just ceremonial tradition. But military planners know the truth. Units that can move in perfect coordination on the parade ground can maneuver under fire on the battlefield. The muscle memory, the instinctive response to commands, the ability to maintain formation under stress. All of this is developed through synchronized movement. Riot police use the same principle when they advance in shield walls. Championship sports teams practice coordinated plays until they become automatic. The Spartans understood this 2,500 years ago. Now let's talk about something that really sets the Spartans apart: their approach to training and preparation. You've probably heard that Spartan boys were taken from their families at age 7 to begin their military training, the famous Agoge system. What you might not know is exactly how this training program created warriors who were psychologically and physically prepared for combat in ways that most armies could only dream of. The Agoge wasn't just about making boys physically tough, although it certainly did that. It was about creating men who could function under extreme stress, who could make tactical decisions in the chaos of battle, and who valued the unit above themselves. Spartan trainees were deliberately kept hungry, so they'd learn to forage and steal food without being caught. If they were caught, they were punished severely, not for stealing, but for being clumsy enough to get caught. This taught resourcefulness and careful planning. They were forced to sleep outside in winter with minimal clothing, teaching them to endure hardship without complaint. They were organized into small units and forced to compete against each other, teaching them both cooperation within their group and competitive drive against outsiders. Here's where it gets really interesting for modern applications. The Spartans understood something that modern special forces training programs have rediscovered. You don't create elite warriors by making training comfortable or easy. You create them by putting candidates through experiences that are actually harder than combat will be. Today's Navy SEALs go through Hell Week, where they're pushed to the absolute limits of human endurance, with almost no sleep and constant physical challenges. Army Rangers go through similar crucibles. Elite police tactical units put candidates through scenarios designed to induce panic and confusion. Why? Because the Spartans taught us that warriors who have been through hell in training will be calm and effective when they face merely difficult situations in actual combat. The Agoge also built something else crucial to Spartan tactical success: absolute trust. When you've trained with the same men since childhood, when you've suffered together, competed together, survived together for years before you ever see a real battlefield, you know exactly what each man will do in any situation. You trust them with your life because you've already trusted them with your life hundreds of times in training. Modern military units try to build this same bond through shared hardship and extended training periods, but they have months or years to do what the Spartans had decades to accomplish. Let's move on to another tactical innovation that the Spartans pioneered: the use of terrain and defensive positioning. Remember Thermopylae, that narrow pass where 300 Spartans held off the Persian army? That wasn't just a lucky geographic accident. Leonidas specifically chose that battlefield because he understood a fundamental tactical principle that military strategists still teach today. Never fight the enemy on terms that favor their strengths. The Persian army's greatest advantage was its massive size. In an open field battle, they could surround and overwhelm any Greek force through sheer numbers. So what did Leonidas do? He chose a battlefield where numbers didn't matter, where the Persians couldn't bring their full strength to bear. The pass at Thermopylae was so narrow that only a few dozen soldiers could fight side by side at any given moment. The Persian numerical advantage was completely neutralized. It didn't matter if they had 100,000 soldiers or 1,000,000, they could only attack with the same number of men the Spartans could defend with. This is called force multiplication through terrain selection, and modern military commanders spend huge amounts of time studying maps and geography for exactly this reason. During the Vietnam War, the Viet Cong used the same principle, choosing to fight in dense jungle where American technological superiority in tanks and aircraft was largely useless. In urban warfare today, defendi NG forces use buildings and narrow streets to neutralize the advantages of a larger, better-equipped attacking force. Corporate strategists use the same thinking. If you can't compete with a larger company in the mass market, you choose a niche market where size doesn't help them. If you can't outspend your competitors on advertising, you find channels where creativity matters more than budget. The Spartans showed us that understanding the battlefield and choosing when and where to fight is often more important than fighting itself. But the Spartans didn't just use terrain defensively, they also understood how to use it offensively in brilliant ways. One of their favorite tactics was called the oblique order attack, and it shows a level of tactical sophistication that was centuries ahead of its time. Here's how it worked. Instead of advancing with their entire line evenly, the Spartans would strengthen one wing of their phalanx, usually the right wing, and advance it forward while holding back the rest of the line. This created a diagonal or oblique formation. The strengthened wing would hit one section of the enemy line with overwhelming force, breaking through it. Once that breakthrough happened, the entire Spartan line would wheel and attack the now exposed enemy flank. What makes this so tactically brilliant is that it uses economy of force. Instead of trying to be strong everywhere, you concentrate your strength at one decisive point, achieve a breakthrough there, and then exploit it. Modern military doctrine calls this concentration of force at the decisive point, and it's considered one of the fundamental principles of war. During World War II, the German Blitzkrieg tactics used the same concept, concentrating tanks and aircraft at one point in the enemy line to achieve a breakthrough, then exploiting that gap. In business, this is like focusing all your resources on winning in one product category or one geographic market before expanding rather than spreading yourself thin, trying to compete everywhere at once. The Spartans figured this out when most armies were still just lining up and pushing against each other until one side broke. Now I want to talk about something that doesn't get enough attention when people discuss Spartan tactics: their incredible discipline under pressure and their ability to execute complex maneuvers in the middle of a chaotic battle. Ancient warfare was loud, confusing, and terrifying. Men screaming, weapons clashing, dust and blood everywhere, limited visibility, no modern communication systems. In that environment, most armies would start as an organized formation, but quickly devolve into a chaotic mass of individual fights once combat actually started. Not the Spartans. They maintained formation and followed commands. Even in the middle of the most intense combat, they could execute a fighting retreat, which is one of the most difficult military maneuvers, where you withdraw from the enemy in an organized way without turning into a panicked rout. They could create deliberate gaps in their line to let enemy soldiers through, then close around them and eliminate them. They could wheel, turn, and reposition even while under attack. How did they do this? Through that intense training we talked about earlier, but also through something else: a clear command structure and simple drilled responses to specific signals. Spartan commanders used musical instruments, body language, and shouted commands that every warrior had heard and responded to thousands of times in training. When the commander gave a specific signal, every Spartan knew exactly what to do without having to think about it. This is another principle modern military forces have adopted. In the chaos of combat, soldiers need to be able to execute complex maneuvers through muscle memory and instant recognition of commands. You can't have a discussion or ask questions when bullets are flying or swords are swinging. You need automatic, drilled responses. This applies beyond the military too. Emergency response teams, surgical teams, firefighters, they all train specific responses to specific situations until they become automatic. When a crisis happens, there's no time for debate or hesitation. You execute the trained response. The Spartans understood that discipline and training create the ability to do complex things under stress that would be impossible without that preparation. Let's talk about another aspect of Spartan tactical genius that's often overlooked: their approach to logistics and sustainability. Most ancient armies were basically armed mobs that would gather, campaign for a short period, then disperse back to their farms or cities. They couldn't stay in the field for extended periods because they didn't have the organization or resources to sustain themselves. The Spartans were different. They created what was essentially the first professional standing army in the Western world. Because Spartan citizens didn't have to work, they had slaves called helots, who did the farming and labor. They dedicate themselves full-time to military training and service. This meant they could campaign for longer periods, maintain their readiness year-round, and respond quickly to threats. But it also meant they had to solve the logistical problems of keeping an army fed, equipped, and healthy over extended periods. The Spartans developed supply systems, medical support, and equipment maintenance protocols that were incredibly advanced for their time. They understood that tactics and bravery mean nothing if your soldiers are starving, sick, or fighting with broken equipment. Modern military forces spend enormous amounts of time and resources on logistics for exactly this reason. There's a military saying that amateurs study tactics while professionals study logistics. You can have the best tactical plan in the world, but if you can't get fuel to your tanks, ammunition to your soldiers, and food to your troops, you lose. Businesses learn this lesson too, often the hard way. You can have a brilliant product and a great marketing strategy, but if your supply chain fails, if you can't get products to customers when and where they need them, you lose to competitors who have their logistics figured out. The Spartans showed us that sustained success requires more than just winning individual battles. It requires the systems and infrastructure to keep fighting effectively over the long term. Now I want to discuss something really fascinating about Spartan tactical adaptability. There's this myth that the Spartans were rigid, stuck in their traditional ways, unable to innovate. Nothing could be further from the truth. Yes, they had traditional methods that worked, but they were willing to adapt and learn from their enemies when necessary. After Sparta's eventually defeat by Thebes at the Battle of Leuctra in 371 BC, where Theban general Epaminondas used an even more extreme version of the oblique order to defeat them, the Spartans studied what happened and adapted their tactics. When they faced enemies with strong cavalry, something Sparta traditionally lacked, they developed tactics to counter cavalry charges using their infantry. When missile troops like archers and slingers became more common in warfare, the Spartans adjusted their formations and tactics to minimize their vulnerability. The lesson here is that no tactic, no matter how effective, works forever. Enemies adapt, circumstances change, and what worked brilliantly yesterday might fail tomorrow. The key to sustained tactical excellence isn't just having good tactics, it's having the ability to recognize when your tactics need to evolve and the willingness to make those changes. Modern military forces understand this, which is why they constantly study both their own operations and their enemies' capabilities, looking for ways to improve. In the business world, this is why successful companies constantly innovate, even when their current products are doing well. They know competitors will catch up, or circumstances will change, and they need to be ahead of those changes, not reacting to them. The Spartans, despite their reputation for conservatism, actually embodied this principle of continuous adaptation within a framework of proven fundamentals. Another crucial Spartan tactical innovation was their approach to leadership and command. Spartan kings and commanders didn't lead from the rear, issuing orders while staying safe. They fought in the front lines, at the point of greatest danger. This wasn't just about bravery or tradition. It was a tactical choice with important consequences. When your soldiers can see their leaders sharing the same dangers they face, it creates a level of morale and commitment that's hard to achieve any other way. Soldiers will fight harder and longer for a leader they see bleeding beside them than for one who's safely behind the lines. But there's another tactical advantage to this style of leadership. A commander who's at the point of contact has immediate first-hand knowledge of what's actually happening in the battle. They can see when the enemy line is weakening, when their own troops are faltering, when an opportunity appears. They can make decisions based on direct observation rather than delayed reports from messengers. Modern military leadership has had to balance this principle with the reality that killing senior commanders can cripple an army's effectiveness, so modern forces train junior leaders to make decisions independently, pushing command authority down to the lowest practical level. This way, the tactical advantages of frontline leadership, quick decisions based on direct observation, remain even if senior commanders need to maintain a broader perspective. In civilian applications, this translates to the difference between management styles. Managers who work alongside their teams, who understand firsthand what challenges their people face, make better decisions than those who lead from a distance based only on reports and data. The Spartans showed us that leadership means sharing the load and the risk, not just giving orders. Let's examine one of the most psychologically sophisticated aspects of Spartan tactical doctrine, their deliberate use of fear as both a weapon and a tool. The Spartans cultivated a terrifying reputation intentionally. Their red cloaks weren't just for identification. They hid bloodstains so enemies couldn't tell if Spartans were wounded. They grew their hair long and groomed it carefully before battle, not from vanity, but because they believed a warrior should look formidable even in death. They marched in perfect silence except for the flutes, creating an eerie, inhuman impression. All of this was psychological warfare. If your enemies are already afraid before the battle even begins, you've won part of the fight without swinging a sword. But the Spartans also used fear as a training tool. Young Spartans were taught to master their own fear, to function effectively even when terrified. This is crucial because fear is inevitable in combat. The question isn't whether you'll be afraid, it's whether you can still think and act effectively despite that fear. Modern military training includes stress inoculation, deliberately exposing trainees to frightening situations in controlled environments so they learn to manage their fear responses. Elite athletes use similar techniques, practicing under pressure situations so competition stress won't overwhelm them. The Spartans pioneered this understanding that fear is a tool you can control and use, not just an emotion to suppress or ignore. Here's something really important about Spartan tactics that connects everything we've talked about so far. The Spartans understood that individual tactics, techniques, and innovations don't exist in isolation. They're all part of an integrated system where each element supports and reinforces the others. The phalanx formation requires intensive training to execute properly. The training builds the trust and coordination needed for the phalanx to work. The culture of putting the unit above the individual makes soldiers willing to hold formation even when instinct says to run. The leadership style keeps commanders informed and soldiers motivated. The use of terrain multiplies the effectiveness of their disciplined formations. The logistics system allows them to campaign long enough to capitalize on their tactical advantages. Everything connects to everything else, creating a coherent system that, much more powerful than any individual element would be alone. This systems thinking is what modern military planners call doctrine, an integrated framework of principles and practices that work together to achieve objectives. When modern forces try to adopt just one element of successful tactics without the supporting structure, it usually fails. You can't just copy the equipment or the formations or the training schedule. You need to understand how all the pieces fit together into a coherent whole. Businesses learn this when they try to copy successful competitors. You can't just copy their marketing strategy or their product features. You need to understand how their entire business system works, how marketing connects to product development, how corporate culture supports innovation, how their supply chain enables their customer service promises. The Spartans showed us that tactical excellence is about creating systems where every element reinforces every other element to produce results greater than the sum of the parts. Now let's talk about how Spartan tactical principles are being applied in the modern world, often in surprising contexts. We've already mentioned special forces units, but the influence goes much deeper than that. Modern police tactical teams, especially those dealing with riot control and crowd management, use modified phalanx formations with shields and synchronized movements. The principle is identical to what the Spartans used. Present an impenetrable wall that moves in coordinated fashion, protecting each officer, while maintaining the ability to advance, retreat, or create openings as needed. In the business world, companies use Spartan-inspired team-building exercises and leadership training. The concept of putting the team above individual glory, of synchronized effort, of shared hardship building trust, these all come directly from Spartan tactical philosophy. High-performance sports teams study Spartan tactics. Championship coaches know that talent alone doesn't win championships. Synchronized teamwork, where every player trusts every other player and everyone executes their role perfectly, that's what separates good teams from great ones. The New Zealand All Blacks rugby team, one of the most successful sports teams in history, explicitly studies warrior cultures including the Spartans to inform their team culture and tactics. Emergency response teams, from firefighters to disaster relief organizations, use Spartan principles of discipline under stress, clear command structures, and drilled responses to chaotic situations. Even in technology and software development, there's a movement towards Spartan principles. Agile development methodologies emphasize small, coordinated teams working in synchronized sprints, continuous training and improvement, and team cohesion over individual contributions. These are all Spartan concepts adapted to writing code instead of fighting battles. The reason Spartan tactics translate so well across such different contexts is that they're based on fundamental truths about human psychology, group dynamics, and organizational effectiveness. These truths don't change whether you're fighting with bronze spears or building software applications. Let me share something that I think is the most important lesson from Spartan tactical excellence, one that applies to whatever battles you're fighting in your own life. The Spartans won not because they had better equipment, not because they were naturally stronger or faster than their enemies, not because they had some secret technique that nobody else knew about. They won because they were more committed to excellence than anyone else was. They won because they were willing to train harder, to maintain discipline when others gave in to chaos, to put in the years of preparation that most people weren't willing to endure. Every single tactical advantage the Spartans had came down to choices. The choice to start training warriors at age 7 when other city-states let boys play. The choice to maintain discipline in battle when instinct said to break ranks. The choice to march in formation when charging wildly felt more natural. The choice to trust your comrades absolutely because you'd built that trust through years of shared hardship. The choice to innovate and adapt when additional methods stopped working. These were all choices, and they were all hard choices that required sacrifice and commitment. Here's how this applies to you, whatever you're trying to accomplish. You're not going to succeed because you have some inherent advantage over everyone else. You're not going to succeed because you discovered some secret hack that makes success easy. You're going to succeed because you're willing to do what others aren't. You're willing to train when others rest. You're willing to maintain discipline when others cut corners. You're willing to work as part of a team when others want individual glory. You're willing to adapt when others stay rigid. You're willing to prepare thoroughly when others wing it. The Spartans teach us that excellence isn't mysterious or magical. It's the result of making the hard choice consistently over time, of building systems that reinforce good practices, of creating a culture where high standards are normal rather than exceptional. Think about the modern warriors who still embody Spartan principles. Navy SEALs endure some of the hardest military training in the world, with a dropout rate around 70 to 80%. The ones who make it through don't succeed because they're superhuman. They succeed because they refuse to quit when quitting would be easier. They maintain discipline when everything in them wants to give up. They help their teammates when they barely have strength for themselves. That's pure Spartan philosophy. Think about championship athletes who drill the same movements thousands of times until they're automatic, who study film and learn from defeats, who sacrifice personal stats for team victories. That's Spartan tactical thinking applied to sports. Think about successful entrepreneurs who build strong teams, who create systems and processes rather than relying on individual genius, who adapt their strategies when markets change but maintain their core principles. That's Spartan business tactics. The beautiful thing about Spartan tactical principles is that they're not reserved for warriors or athletes or business leaders. They apply to any challenge you face. Are you trying to get in shape? The Spartan approach says don't rely on motivation or look for shortcuts. Build a system of habits and discipline. Find training partners who will hold you accountable the way Spartans held each other accountable in the phalanx. Make the hard choice to work out even when you don't feel like it. Are you building a career? The Spartan approach says invest in developing real skills through practice and training, not just collecting credentials. Build a reputation for reliability and excellence the way Spartans built their reputation through consistent performance. Be willing to adapt your skills as the job market changes, the way Spartans adapted their tactics to new challenges. Are you working on creative projects? The Spartan approach says, show up consistently and do the work even when inspiration is absent. Create structures and routines that make creation easier, the way Spartan drill made complex battle maneuvers automatic. Be part of a community of creators who support and challenge each other, the way Spartan warriors supported each other in formation. Here's something crucial that the Spartans understood, and that we often forget in our modern culture of instant gratification. Excellence takes time. The Agoge training system took 23 years to produce a fully trained Spartan warrior. 23 years. We live in a world where everyone wants results immediately, where we're told we can transform our bodies in 30 days or become successful in 6 months. The Spartans knew better. They knew that real excellence, the kind that holds up under pressure, the kind that lasts, requires years of consistent effort. This doesn't mean you can't make progress quickly. It means that sustainable, reliable excellence is a long-term project. Those Navy SEALs went through months of brutal training, but the really elite ones have been refining their skills for years or decades. Championship teams might have breakout seasons, but the truly dominant ones maintain excellence over years. Successful businesses might grow quickly, but the ones that last build strong foundations over time. If you take only one thing from this exploration of Spartan tactical excellence, let it be this: commitment to the process matters more than any individual technique. The Spartans didn't have one secret move that won battles. They had a complete commitment to excellence in every aspect of warfare, maintained over generations. You don't need to find the one secret trick to success in whatever you're doing. You need to commit to being excellent in all the fundamentals, consistently, over time. You need to build systems that support that excellence. You need to surround yourself with people who share your commitment. You need to be willing to adapt when necessary while maintaining your core principles. That's the Spartan way, and it works just as well now as it did 2,500 years ago. Before we wrap up, I want to address something important. The Spartans were far from perfect. Their society was built on slavery. They were often brutal and inflexible in their social structure. Their military focus came at the expense of arts, philosophy, and other aspects of culture that make life rich and meaningful. We can learn from their tactical excellence, without romanticizing their entire society or ignoring its serious flaws. The principles of teamwork, discipline, preparation, and adaptability that we've discussed aren't inherently Spartan. They're human principles that the Spartans happen to apply brilliantly in a military context. We can take those principles and apply them in ways that align with our own values, in contexts where they serve creativity, collaboration, and human flourishing rather than conquest and domination. The point isn't to become Spartans. The point is to learn from their tactical excellence and apply those lessons to our own challenges in ways that make us better, more effective, more successful at whatever we're trying to accomplish. So here's my challenge to you. Look at whatever you're trying to accomplish right now, whether it's a career goal, a creative project, a fitness objective, a relationship you're trying to build, whatever matters to you. Now ask yourself these Spartan-inspired questions. Am I training and preparing as seriously as this goal deserves, or am I hoping talent or luck will carry me through? Am I part of a team or community that makes me stronger, or am I trying to do everything alone? Do I have the discipline to do the right things consistently, even when I don't feel motivated? Am I willing to adapt my approach when circumstances change, or am I rigidly sticking to methods that aren't working? Have I built systems and habits that support my goals, or am I relying on willpower and good intentions? Am I committed for the long term, or am I looking for quick results? These questions cut through all the noise and get to what actually matters for success. The Spartans asked themselves these questions about warfare. You can ask them about whatever battlefield you're fighting on. 2,500 years after 300 Spartans held the pass at Thermopylae, we're still talking about them, still learning from them, still inspired by them. That's not because they had the best equipment or the largest army. It's because they embodied principles of excellence that transcend time, culture, and context. They showed us that a small group of thoroughly prepared, deeply committed, perfectly coordinated individuals can accomplish things that seem impossible. They showed us that discipline beats talent, that teamwork beats individual skill, that preparation beats improvisation, that systems beat hopes and wishes. They showed us that excellence is a choice, a hard choice that you have to make again and again, day after day, year after year. But they also showed us that when you make that choice consistently, when you commit fully to excellence in all its forms, you become capable of things that seem superhuman to everyone else. So the next time you're facing a difficult challenge, the next time you're not sure if you can accomplish what you've set out to do, remember those 300 men in the mountain pass. Remember that they didn't hold off the Persian army through magic or miracles. They did it through training, discipline, teamwork, tactical intelligence, and an absolute refusal to quit. You have access to the same principles they used. You can train for your challenges the way they trained for battle. You can build teams and support systems the way they built the phalanx. You can develop discipline and create habits the way they drilled their tactics until they were automatic. You can adapt and innovate the way they adjusted to new enemies and new circumstances. The Spartan way isn't easy. It was never meant to be easy, but it works. It worked 2,500 years ago, and it works now. The question is, are you ready to make the commitment? Are you ready to embrace the discipline, the training, the teamwork, the long-term dedication that real excellence requires? Are you ready to stop looking for shortcuts and start building systems? Are you ready to be part of something bigger than yourself, to support others and be supported by them the way Spartans supported each other in the shield wall? If you're ready to apply Spartan tactical principles to your own life and challenges, then you're already on the path to accomplishing things that other people will think are impossible. You're already starting to develop the mindset and capabilities that separate those who achieve their goals from those who only wish for them. And that's the ultimate lesson of Spartan tactical excellence. It's not about being born special or having advantages others don't have. It's about making choices, the choice to prepare thoroughly, to act with discipline, to work as part of a team, to adapt when necessary, and to never, ever quit. Those choices, made consistently over time, create excellence. They create results that seem superhuman but are actually just the natural outcome of human beings operating at their full potential. The Spartans showed us what's possible when we make those choices. Now it's up to you to show yourself what you're capable of when you apply the same principles to your own life. Molon Labe, come and take them. The Spartans weren't just talking about their weapons, they were talking about their spirit, their determination, their absolute commitment to their cause. Whatever your cause is, whatever you're fighting for, bring that same spirit to it. Prepare like a Spartan, fight like a Spartan, never quit like a Spartan, and watch what becomes possible.